What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and in today's episode of the fighting game tutorial series we are going to be going over improvements to the character select and stage select interactions, because since we've modified our menus and improved them significantly, the methods of which we move between these menus also should change to not only fit that theme and fit into that architecture, but also they should play well together. Because, for example, if I am to go to my character select and then select my characters and then go to my stage selection screen, and we come here and we can see our stages in the background, or if you're using the video method you can see the videos here. So we have a few different options, but when we go back to the character select screen, our character select menu did not have the background, and also the time that was previously on the character select does not reset. So the character select has a timer until it forces these characters to go to the stage selection screen, and when it hits 0, that's when it will do the transition. But since the character select is technically still up, when we go to the stage selection screen right here, we would expect that if we go back we would have those 30 seconds again, but we don't. We have the same amount of time that we had previously before we left the character selection screen. So you get into situations like this where we both picked our character with 1 second left, and now we go back and it's going to reset and go to the stage selection screen. It's going to bring us to the stage selection screen almost immediately. But also notice when we go back there is no background to our character select now. Our characters are just in an open space. Now you may want this because you may have a 3D environment back here. What I did was make a render target and put a texture on a plane, and so we were making it visible and hiding it. If you're using that method like I am, we want to make sure that that plane is visible again when we exit the stage selection screen. So there's a few little things here that are bugs that I want to clean up in today's episode, just to make sure everything is working as expected. So if you'd like to get caught up in the entire fighting game tutorial series before checking out this episode, you can see how we've done everything from those menus I was showing you earlier, our cinematics, our game flow, our attacks, and a lot more. Alternatively, if you don't care about that and you only care about the character select and stage selection screen improvements, then I still recommend you watch the previous episodes of these menus, because all the logic in today's episode is going to be building off of the logic in the previous episodes for these menus. So if you followed them, you can follow along with this easily. With that out of the way, we can go ahead and get started. This is a code and blueprint tutorial series. We're going to be working the blueprints today because we're improving the widgets, which are all blueprint. So first things first, let's go to our widgets. So blueprints, widgets, menus, and let's go to character select screen. Let's also go to the level selector stage selection screen. And in here, we can go to the graph for both of these widgets. So starting in the character select screen, I want to go to where my timer is. So if I scroll down to my variables here, I have a remaining selection time float value, and we can go to everywhere this is used. So I'm going to right click and find references, but it's going to be used in our tick function. And so you can see it's here. We take remaining selection time, which is a default of 30 seconds. And on tick, which is every frame, we take the delta time, which is the time passed since the last tick, and subtract it from our remaining selection time. Then we set remaining selection time equal to that result. So basically, every time there's an update or a frame, we're taking the time that's passed and subtract it from our 30 seconds, so that as real time passes in the world, that counter is going down. Then we check if the result is greater than 0, and if it is greater than 0, we do some other logic in here. And most of this is hard-coded player 2 logic that is going to be updated very shortly, so I'm not really going to comment on this. But if you've been following the series, you will know about this. The more important logic for today's episode is the false of this branch, if there's not greater than 0 seconds remaining. This means that the timer has expired. We have a function for this, so we should go into the timer expired function. And when the timer expires, we check to see if the players are locked in. If they are locked in, we don't have to do anything. If they're not locked in, we make them pick a random character for both player 1 and player 2. And then once we're done with that, we go to the level selection screen and reset the remaining selection time. Now there's nothing wrong with this, this works perfectly, but the issue is when we go to the character selection screen manually and we don't let the time run out. So now let's compare this logic that we have here to the logic when we proceed to the level selection screen, which is our go to level select function here. So you can click on it here, or just go to your event graph and search for the event, which is going to be down here. And so we check to see if the stage selection screen is not already up. If it's not already up, we start adding it. So we check our game instance reference, and if it's valid, we use our confirm selections to set the character classes, because at this point they are locked in. And same for if it's a random character, we're going to lock them in here. So this is very similar to what we were seeing in timer expired. And once we're done, we're setting these skins for the characters as well. So if they have a certain outfit or what we're calling a skin for the character, sets that, plays the sound effect for going to the next menu, creates the widget, sets the reference to the character select screen on the stage selection screen widget, adds it to the viewport, tells the character select that the stage selection screen is up, and hides the character selection screen. Notice the difference? We don't ever set the remaining section time back to the default value. So we can simply do this by copying this node in timer expired and putting it here, or we can type set time remaining, or remaining selection time is the variable name. And we can set it to 30. We really should have a default value that we can set it back to, but this will now work for this specific case. So if we come in here, we let it go down a few seconds, you'll see I can go to my next menu. Timer resets, that's great. Now if I press back, I get 30 seconds back again. So that's all. Very simple update, but we need to make sure that we're setting that time back just so that we always have our 30 seconds more on our character select screen. Of course, if your behavior is different, you don't have to follow this directly, but I think this makes the most sense. Now, the other thing I want to do is display the background of the character select properly. So if we go to that logic, it's right here in this comment that I have in event construct, add a background to the character select screen. We have a function called display background. So if we come into display background, we were getting the game instance, seeing if there was a default scene 2D component. And we manually applied a component tag here so that we know this is the character select capture, or the character select background. If it was equal to this when looping through in display background, then we know that we have the right object we want to work on, so we want to stop hiding it. So we're saying it's not hidden in game and it is visible. Now at this point we could break out of the loop, but actually we don't have a for each loop with break, we just have a regular loop. Either way, it will loop a few more times if we have more actors in here. Then once it completes, it will come over here and we look for this plane blueprint. The plane blueprint is the actual background that we have in the world. This is a camera that's looking at what we want to render, and this is the plane that we're rendering it on, so we make sure that we can find this one as well. This also has a tag, it's called an image. And so this plane blueprint was basically just a plane that we want to render things on. We have a few different examples in our character select and stage selection screen map menus, so this might make sense if you've watched these episodes, but if you haven't watched these episodes, basically we have a differentiation between if we have an image or video of the map preview or character select preview, or if we have an actual render target looking at something and displaying that to the screen, or if it's a 3D environment. So in this case, if it's not equal to image, then we're just setting the visibility to true. So basically, all of this is doing one thing, and it is going to be setting our character select background to the proper visibility. It is called when character select screen constructs. However, if we go into our level selection screen and go to event construct in here, and specifically go all the way over to the right, we are getting all the default scene 2D components and our plane blueprints in here and setting them accordingly. And the reason this is important is because the character select and the stage select both use very similar things. They both use a render target in some cases with a camera or a capture component that is looking at something, and they both use a plane blueprint to render what we want behind the characters. So when we're on the character select, we expect to see the character select content behind them. When we're on the level select, we expect to see the level select content behind them. Once we set these variables in event construct on the level selection screen and add the elements to this array, this allows us to modify them based on the stage we're hovering over, which is something that we want to do on our stage selection screen. So if we go to move selection, you'll see we have our standard move selection logic in here, but then we have this section here where we're determining which component or plane blueprint is going to be visible or hidden based on the map that we're on. Now, this logic is made more complex because I do have different versions in this template to show you that you can use multiple methods, but typically you would only be using one method, like you might only be using a render target or an image or a video. You wouldn't be using all three like I am. Again, I still want to support this just in case you want to do it, and I think it's good for the template to support this. So with this in mind, This is perfectly fine to leave alone, but what we have to do is make sure we actually call display background again in the character selection screen when we go back to this menu. So let's go back to the event graph, and specifically let's go to our new controls that we have where we exit out of this menu and return back to the character select right here with event back or on press the back button. So we are telling the character selection screen that the stage selection screen is no longer up and we're making it visible. Once it's visible, we play a sound effect, we're resetting the level select screen values back to their defaults, and we're removing it from the parent. At this point, we're saying character select screen is now the current widget, which is true. However, when we do this, we should really be calling display background on the character select screen, because we want to go through that function that I showed you earlier, which was setting the visibility of the proper component for our background on our character select screen. So we come into our game now and select our characters and go to the stage selection screen. And we go back. You can see we still have our background up here. Really what happened is it got replaced by the stage selection screen backgrounds. And we can move around here and change it. But then when we exit this menu, we're making sure the character selection screen gets their menu back as expected. So there we go, guys. That's how we can improve our character select and level or stage selection screen in our fighting game tutorial series. I hope this video helped you, and if it did, please subscribe. It does more for myself and the channel than anything else you can do, and I really appreciate it. If you want to support the channel and myself further, you can check out the YouTube membership, Patreon, and Discord subscriptions, where you'll get benefits like getting these templates when they go on the Epic Marketplace at a discounted price, as well as some merch and other things like that. If you ran into any problems following this tutorial or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord community. There is a link in the description, and I would be happy to help you out. It's also completely free. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.